Welcome to Security Update. I am Rimamnde Shawulu. Between 2nd and 5th August, Nigeria recorded one major moment of relief, another deadly rural attack, and fresh evidence that illegal mining is becoming a national security problem. More than 300 abducted Nigerians were reportedly freed in Kwara and Niger states. In Sokoto, armed men killed at least 12 villagers, burned a family inside their home, and abducted women and children. In Taraba State, a large population of illegal miners dispersed from a mining settlement as authorities prepared reinforcement action, raising the question of where those miners and the networks behind them have gone, and whether these people will not move to another area in Taraba State or in nearby states. New security assessment also estimates that more than 5,000 people died in violent incidences across Nigeria within the last 3 months. And the federal government has approved major salary increase for military personnel. Tonight we separate confirmed facts from unanswered questions, examine what these developments mean, and ask whether Nigeria is beginning to disrupt criminal networks or merely reacting after the damage has been done. We start with the most encouraging development that came on the 5th of August. The presidency announced that security operatives had secured the freedom of 308 people abducted from Kwara and Niger states. The figure included 176 people connected to the Woro and Nuku communities in Kaiama local government area of Kwara State and another 132 abductees in Niger State. Many of the Kwara victims were women and children. They had reportedly spent about 183 days in captivity following the attack of 3rd February. No deaths were reported during the operation that led to their freedom. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu praised the security agencies involved, while the Kwara State government credited federal authorities, security forces, and community stakeholders. The breakdown of the abductees freed are Kwara State 176, Niger State 132. Kwara captivity period was approximately 183 days. No deaths were reported during the release. This is a major humanitarian outcome. For the victims and their families, freedom after 6 months of captivity is not simply a security statistic. It is indeed the end of a prolonged period of uncertainty, fear, deprivation, and possible abuse. But the most important questions still remain. The government has not fully disclosed how the captives regained their freedom. Were they rescued during a military operation? Were negotiations involved? How much was paid? Did community leaders facilitate their release? And were any of the kidnappers arrested during the period of the rescue? Of course, the next stage for these victims is the period of rehabilitation. 183 days or 6 months is not small time in the life of children. The people who spent these months in captivity may need urgent medical examinations, trauma, counseling, nutrition support, and protection from further victimization. Children may need help to return to school. Adults who have lost farms or businesses may need support to resume their activities. And freedom is the beginning of recovery, not the end of the story. And of course, as the situation is now, the fear of recapture or rekidnapping of the people who have just been freed remains very high, as no one will tell at the moment how they were rescued. If they were rescued because money was paid and they were released, that may be an incentive for the bandits or the terrorists to come back to do more kidnapping and get more money. A vicious cycle which needs to be broken by a strong state and strong government action. And in Sokoto State, while hundreds were regaining their freedom, another community was mourning. On 2nd August, armed men attacked a village in Sokoto. Residents told Reuters news agency that at least 12 people were killed and unspecified number of women and children were abducted. 6 members of one family were reportedly killed after the attackers set their house on fire. Security agencies were deployed to pursue the gunmen and search for the abductees. However, at the time of the initial reporting, no arrests had been made. The rescues attacker casualties had not been independently confirmed. And of course, the number of people kidnapped remains preliminary. The identities and affiliations of the attackers were also not confirmed. This matters because Sokoto faces overlapping bandit groups. There are groups in Sokoto that are loyal to ISWAP, and there are groups that are loyal to Al-Qaeda, that is the Lakrawas. There are also cases where criminal and ideological networks overlap, sharing routes, cooperating temporarily, and of course at the local level, the cooperation may become permanent as there is reward for them to cooperate and get money from the ransom that government and family members are usually forced to pay. The best way to understand this attack is not to label the perpetrators too quickly. Should examine the attackers' movements, weapons, language, targets, and whether ransom demands have followed. The wider concern is that village attacks are often designed to achieve several objectives at once. They kill residents, abduct people for ransom, steal food and livestock, burn property, and force survivors to leave, creating an ever-increasing large swaths of ungoverned territory. That means that a single attack can produce casualties, displacements, economic collapse, wider space for the activities of these outlaws.
Ubangiji Allah ya saka muna baba gare ta saboda dai ita gwamnatin gaskiya ta zalunce mu. Mun yi mata aiki Ubangiji na Allah ka isa muna gare ta. Allah ka isa muna baba karamar hukuma ina ta nan ne ga ka tashi. Karamar hukuma sabon birni. Okay sabon birni ta ka tashi ga wani tini. Sabon birni ta da kamar ta nan. To ba da mu. Ubangiji Allah ya saka muna ga karamar hukumar mu. To ya kuma shugaban kasa kai duk gaba ɗaya.
And in the northeastern state of Taraba State, different types of security threat is developing around illegal mining. Reports between 2nd and 5th August describe a major influx of miners into Mayokan village in Kusum Ward, Bali local government area of the state. A large informal settlement reportedly developed around the gold mining site. As the state's anti-illegal mining task force prepared enforcement, many of the miners began leaving or dispersing from the area. The exact number has not been independently verified. No deaths were confirmed during the latest movement. Earlier enforcement operations had produced arrests, including 2 suspects detained during a July raid. The most important question is not simply whether the miners left the village, it is where they went. If thousands of unregistered miners move suddenly into forest, neighboring villages, or other mining locations, the problem may be displaced rather than solved. Illegal mining sites can attract many different groups. They may include desperate local workers, migrant laborers, mineral traders, armed guides, criminal financiers, and foreign nationals. It would be wrong to describe every miner as a criminal, but an uncontrolled settlement around a valuable mineral deposit creates serious security risks that are associated with the high banditry activities and insurgency, as well as kidnapping activities. Illegal mining can finance armed groups, it can attract weapons, it can produce conflict over land and water, it can increase human trafficking, child labor, drug abuse, and violence. It can also create environmental damage that destroys farmland and contaminates water sources, as the case in Zamfara, where many people have died from the contamination of the water sources by different kinds of contaminants.
There is no place for illegal mining. I'm going to work hand in hand with the federal government to ensure that proper mining activities are done in the state. This is a collective responsibility. It is a responsibility that all of us, and that is why these roles have been spelled out very explicitly in the executive order, so that every one of us will know the role we have to take.
And of course, in the last 3 months, 1,000 violent deaths have been reported in Nigeria. A new assessment by SBM Intelligence estimated that 5,091 people died in violent incidents across Nigeria between April and June 2026. Borno State reportedly recorded the highest with 1,355 deaths. The assessment said the dead include 304 security personnel, 200 soldiers, 9 police officers, 5 custom officers. These are conflict monitoring estimates and not a final government death register. Some incidents may be reported late. Others, especially in communities, may never enter national databases. But even with these limitations, the figures suggest a severe national crisis. That is an average of almost 56 people dying every day. The figure should not be presented as one undifferentiated number. It is important to separate civilians, soldiers, police officers, insurgents, bandits, and communal fighters. Each category tells a different story. Civilian deaths measure failure to protect communities. Security force deaths show the pressure on those responding. Militant deaths may indicate operational success, but they do not by themselves prove that an area has become safer. While social media moves from one trending story to another, Nigeria may be losing dozens of people to violence every single day. This crisis continues even when it is no longer trending. And in another good news, in addition to the plan of the government to recruit 28,000 more soldiers, August 4, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu approved major salary increases for military personnel. Low-ranking personnel are expected to receive increases of up to 80%. Warrant officers through colonels are expected to receive increase of 50%. Generals are expected to receive increases of 30%. The new structure is scheduled to take effect from 1st September. The government says that the increases are intended to improve morale, retention, and welfare. This is important. Soldiers deployed for long periods require adequate pay, accommodation, medical treatment, equipment, and support for their families. Poor welfare can weaken military discipline and readiness. But of course, higher salaries will not automatically solve Nigeria's security problems. This policy, however, should be measured against troop retention, desertion rates, response time, equipment availability, rotation from combat zones, protection of civilians, reduction in attacks, and treatment of wounded personnel and bereaved families. Better pay is justified if it improves professionalism and operational effectiveness and readiness. What are the implications of the releases of these abductees? The release of the 308 abductees has several implications. First, it demonstrates that large number of captives can be recovered even after many months. That offers hope to families whose relatives remain in captivity across Nigeria. Secondly, the operation may have produced valuable intelligence. The victims may know where they were held, how they were moved, what languages the captors spoke, what vehicles or motorcycles were used, and how food and weapons reached the camps. Their testimony could help security agencies locate hideouts and identify collaborators, but interviews must be conducted carefully. Traumatized victims should not be pressured publicly or exposed to retaliation. Third, the release me of kidnapping. If security agencies penetrated the networks without paying ransom, it could weaken the kidnappers' business model. But if large ransom was secretly paid, the release may encourage further mass abductions. This is why transparency matters in this case. Was ransom paid? Fourth, there is a risk of celebrating the release without dismantling the network. If the captors remain free, they may abduct another group. The success of the operation should therefore be judged not by the number of people released, but what happens next. Were the camps destroyed? Were weapons recovered? Were informants identified? Were the affected communities given permanent protection? Will members of the community be able to go back to their communities? And can residents return to their farms without fear? And finally, the victims need a structured recovery program. Medical treatment, counseling, reunion, education, and economic support should be treated as part of national security. A rescued citizen who is abandoned after release remains a victim of the conflict. And in conclusion, the developments of the past few days show both progress and continuing danger. The freedom of 308 abductees is a major achievement and a moment of relief. But the Sokoto attack shows that armed groups can still kill, burn homes, and abduct vulnerable people. The Taraba mining crisis shows how insecurity can grow around uncontrolled economic activity. The national casualty figures reveal the scale of the violence, and the military pay increase shows that the government recognizes the need to strengthen troop welfare. The final test is not the number of announcements. It is whether criminal networks are dismantled, captors are prosecuted, communities are protected, and released victims are helped to rebuild their lives. Security is not only the absence of gunfire, it is the ability to travel, farm, study, and sleep without fear. I am Rimamnde Shawulu. Thank you for watching Security Update.